All right. Hello, everyone. It is 2 p.m. Eastern, so I think we're going to go ahead and start to respect everyone's time. My name is Daniel Eliot, and I'm Director of Education and Strategic Initiatives at the National Cybersecurity Alliance. I'm going to welcome you to today's webinar. I apologize if there's background noise. It just started storming like crazy all of a sudden where I am. And so there might be thunder and raindrops in the background. So today we're going to be talking about e-commerce security in particular. And the reason we scheduled this webinar to occur right now is that so many businesses are moving from, are being forced to move from in-person, storefronts, foot traffic to e-commerce platforms and relying upon mobile payment devices. And so we want to be sure that we're equipping individuals with the resources that they can secure those e-commerce platforms and those mobile devices or mobile payment systems. And a lot of the advice that we are going to be covering applies to more than just e-commerce and mobile security, right? A lot of the basics apply across the board when it comes to good cyber hygiene, but we wanted to have a specific conversation as more businesses are relying upon these platforms. So to give you a little bit of background on the National Cybersecurity Alliance, we're a leading neutral nonprofit devoted to cybersecurity education and awareness. And we do that through large-scale national campaigns. For instance, we co-lead National Cybersecurity Awareness Month each year with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. And so National Cybersecurity Awareness Month is recognized every October, so we hope you participate. And you can learn more about National Cybersecurity Awareness Month at StaySafeOnline.org. We also lead Data Privacy Day for North America, which is recognized every January 28th. And so we have a full campaign. You can sign up to be a Data Privacy Day champion. All of it is free to participate. We live stream our event from LinkedIn's headquarters. A lot of great information specifically focused on privacy itself. And you can also learn about that at StaySafeOnline.org. We also have our Cybersecurity by Business program, which this series is part of. And Cybersecurity by Business is the National Cybersecurity Alliance's effort to provide support to the nation's small business community when it comes to improving their cybersecurity. We know that they lack a lot of the resources that large organizations have, and so we want to be sure that they're equipped with the knowledge and the tools that they can take steps to better secure the information they're collecting, creating, storing, transmitting, etc. We wouldn't be able to do these virtual workshops, these in-person workshops that we used to do, our newsletters and infographics. We wouldn't be able to do any of that without the support from our national sponsors. And so I want to thank Trend Micro for being such champions of the small business community across the country and for supporting our small business program. Our affiliate sponsors, Generali Global Assistance, and then our strategic partners, ITSP Magazine. And so none of this would be possible without their support. And so I definitely want to extend a warm thank you to them. So for this hour, you're going to be hearing from primarily two of our guest speakers. Bill Malik, who's the Vice President of Infrastructure Technologies, will kick us off here. And then we'll move to Mitchel Chang, who's the Vice President of Corporate Social Responsibility and Education, both at Trend Micro. And they have extensive backgrounds in the cybersecurity space. And so we are very lucky to have them with us for this hour. And so I'm going to move over to your slide here, Bill. And do you want to kick us off on this slide? And maybe I should unmute Bill. That might help things. How about that?
I'm sorry, I'm messing with you. That would be fine, thanks.
I can hear you now.
Yes. Okay, so again, thanks for your attendance, and please bring any questions you have. Anything that we can't get to by the end of the session, we will feed questions and answers back to Daniel, so they'll be posted Copies of this material are available as well. So my name's Bill Malik. I've been with Trend Micro for almost 3 years. I've been in IT for 46 years. I started as a COBOL programmer at an insurance company, went to IBM, was there for over a decade, went to Gartner, was there for over a decade. And for most of this century, I've been working as an independent and as an infrastructure architect. With Trend, my job is to help people understand the meat between the technology they've got and the security risks they face. In the course of this presentation, I'll be discussing on the first 4 or so slides about how the environment has changed. And then my colleague Mitchel will go through the details and steps. There is one slide that we added on mobile device security that I'm prepared to talk to if we need to get to it. But otherwise, we'll just begin with this first section on social distancing impacts. Yes, so the major impacts of social distancing for most small business owners are twofold. The first is that you don't have people walking into the stores. What that means is you have to use different channels to reach them, different ways of advertising your products, different ways of allowing potential customers to view those products, and if they decide to make a buying decision, different payment systems as opposed to cash or taking a credit card or waving an iPhone over a device physically in your store. They'll be going through some other media. So that brings one set of challenges. The second set of challenges is most organizations have their employees working from home. That brings a couple of challenges. First is you have different pattern of demand on your business's IT services. This is separate from the different applications you'll be using and the demand you're seeing from prospects and customers. We'll talk about that a bit. And it also means you have to rethink how you manage those workers. And we have a little more detail on each of those topics. The first on the next chart, demand, fulfillment, and payment. How do people order online? Do you have your own capability? Do people go to you through Amazon or Etsy? Do you have an agreement with a third party? Take a look at your information security practices and how they line up with what those vendors offer. This is important because there's an awful lot of trash out there. There's a lot of misleading information. There are a lot of folks attempting to get, especially small business owners, because you tend not to have as robust an IT security infrastructure, and therefore would be easy pickings. For a large business, the chance that they're faced with ransomware attack or spam, they probably have staff to be able to cope with it. A small business firm that gets hit by, say, ransomware may face a very uncomfortable Hobbs choice between paying the ransom and hoping that the bad guys live up to their end of the bargain, which is problematic because we already know they're bad guys, or possibly being unable to continue to operate. After the order, the second step is going to be some kind of fulfillment. How do people get the stuff from you? How do you coordinate and organize and manage curbside pickup? I myself just ordered a piece of IT gear, and I'm going to be driving this afternoon out a couple of miles up the road to pick up a device, and I'm not going to go in the store, and they've got the payment. So how do we know that I'm the right person? How do we gauge satisfaction? They lose the opportunity to cross-sell. Who do you use for that, and what do you rely on in terms of the integrity of that deliverment fulfillment system? And then finally, how is your e-commerce payment? Most of you have probably already sorted this out, of course. Are you using Venmo or Square or PayPal or taking credit cards over the net? There already are systems in place to protect payment card information. There's a whole payment card industry data security standard, PCI DSS. For most small businesses, you only run into it if you have a problem, in which case you find that your transaction fees will go up following that problem. Because of the greater stress on this as your source of cash, of income, you will find that there will be greater scrutiny placed on that, which puts an additional burden on small businesses to make sure their things are shipshape in that space. On the next slide, we talk about the other leg, which is the challenge of managing remote work. The first thing I'd like to talk about is supervise people. Many folks didn't have the luxury of management training through some sort of formal curriculum, either in school or with a large vendor. And so they're used to just a very casual, informal wandering around way of seeing what's going on. Now you aren't going to be seeing those folks face to face. And for some folks, some supervisors, this is the first time they've had to confront this. What it forces you to do is to think about what really makes up the value that the workers offer to the business. What makes up a definition of their productivity? I mean, you can't focus on activity because you can't see them typing, calling, writing, whatever it is they're doing, they used to do in the office that are now doing at home. What you need to focus on is results. And when you focus crisply and clearly on results, now you can begin to adopt actually a very, very positive structure. What are the inputs that my team needs? How well are they doing the job they need to do? What are the outputs they produce? And who checks it? Now, that fourth one may come as a little bit of a curveball. I was an IT auditor for a few years. I helped design the CISA exam for ISACA. The point is that when you make these assumptions explicit, all of a sudden you have a real handle on what it is that drives profit, what it is that retains customers, what it is that builds the business. And that means, in the words of a friend of mine, you will actually be on the brink of a productivity renaissance because we've scraped away the extra stuff and we're now left with nothing to focus on but the real heartbeat of the business. So there's a plus in there, but as with any change, it means you're going to have to think a little more deeply about things and revisit some assumptions. The second thing that managing remote workers brings is it's going to put additional load on your IT infrastructure. How do your employees communicate with you? What tools do they use? They use Slack, they use instant messaging, they use the phone a lot, email. Do you have the capacity to support that? And what risks are coming in that you might not have expected that are there now? Remember that working from home, a lot of these home users are going to be connecting to a personal network that is not designed for information security, is not designed to support privacy. That business that is supporting the home worker is going to be looking at a slightly expanded attack surface. You may want to consider things like getting some sort of technology that your workers from home can put in place to strengthen their systems. We are an IT security vendor. I'm not going to go through the catalog. There are lots of good ones out there. Our founder, Eva Chen, has said publicly that when it comes to who the competition is the bad guys. Using some, roger that, use it, keep it up to date. And with that, I will turn it over to Mitchell to take us home.
Hi, good morning and good afternoon. My name is Mitchel Chang. I'm head of global corporate social responsibility and education for Trend Micro. I've been with the company for almost 18 years, and my primary job prior to head of the education group is I involved very closely with our customers. I was running customer support for almost 16 years at Trend Micro. So I will share with you some the latest status. And Daniel, if you can go ahead, advance the slides. This just came out from FBI yesterday. The cybercrime has increased about 300%. That's about approximately 3 to 4 times more incidents that's reported to IC Square than the typical average day. But I do want to invite the audience to think about is yesterday, instead of 3 or 4,000 cybersecurity complaints, if we look at COVID-19, there's about 25,000 cases reported, and mortality rate was like over 1,400. So if we're looking the cyber threats that's coming in, definitely is taking a different curve than how COVID-19 is moving. That is moving. This human biological virus is moving so fast, and what's happening from my perspective, this really give the cyber criminal a lot of opportunity, because first of all, there's a lot of confusion and fear factor. There is a lot of things we have to do differently to prevent this human virus from spreading, and so there's just a lot of opportunity, and also um, uh, we think about the plateau, because when we're dealing with human viruses, especially COVID-19, the curve is very steep, and when the people try to guess where the apex point is, and how they can decline, start making me think about how cyber threats are coming, because first of all, the rate so far we've seen that today's cyber threats are taking a different curve, and that they may have much longer tail after the crisis or incident. And next slide, please, Daniel. So a couple of things I would like to share with you. I think you advanced one too many. There we go. First of all, when the virus started, the COVID-19 started to make an impact to the world, we see there's a lot of spam email related to COVID-19. And so these numbers are probably relative. I just want to give you a perspective. This is taking off of one of our cloud smart protection network from the devices we have out there from our customer and user install base. But you can see that there's just a huge jump, and there's probably more than 1,000-time increase and on the spam mail. And these are not directly threats related, but they're just spam. And if we look at the next slide, a number of malicious URLs also increase, but it's not at the same rate as the spam email. This is just a hierarchy how the cyber criminals and hackers are leveraging. Because you think about email, it's kind of like very easy to advertise, and you can propagate many of those spams out there, and doesn't cost as much. And when you get into malicious website, it's something the hackers or organized criminals have to design and try to lure people to the malicious website. And so the fact of the matter is we do see a big increase for the last month or two in both categories. Can you advance next slide? So I'm just give you some example of what we see in on the Trend Micro research team worldwide. First of all, we see a lot of activity underground by the criminals, and they will leverage the current confusion, and there's a lot of supplies that's hard to come by. Those are perfect opportunity for potential criminal acts. Next slide. And we will see criminals also activity. They will not only try to make scams and such things. I believe we do have a specific webinar that's coming up. We're going to be talking about COVID-19 related scams, but there's just a lot of opportunity, and also criminals may be using stolen credentials to post something. So they're leveraging all aspects of technology, such as this phishing scam example we see from you using Netflix is a lure. Okay, next. And as I mentioned, these are some email we intercept the spam, and they may not be directly attacking. They're just trying to lure users to click on certain things or open up certain vulnerability. The top 2 spam samples we see out there are potential shipment notification, is you purchase something, from Amazon or eBay, there seems to be a lot of more activity in that area, and also anything related to health, medical related topics. And next slide. Okay, so these are the stats for United States. I just extrapolated last night from our system, but I like for you to pay. There's several number here, kind of busy slide, but look at the 220x and 260%. One is for spam email, 220x increase. Again, this is a low cost way to proliferate information out there, get people to lure people into doing something bad. And 220x, we're not talking about 220%. 220x, it's just a significant amount of increase. And then we would get to the next level where, if you're a trick or you click on certain things you're not supposed to, you go to a malicious website. That's about three times more activity what we see from February to March. So the message here is, I think the internet and the email and everything we communicate through the online basis, the activities are increasing quite a bit, and this overall situation is going to get worse than it get better. Next slide. So because of this activity, I do want to segment a little bit into something called business email compromise. So we're looking at actors are organized crimes out there leveraging phishing and spam to lure the users to get into a bad situation. But they are doing that, but also what they're doing in addition is trying to do some social engineering to figure out who may be the person that you're close to. For example, a company may have a CEO and CFO. They try to look up their names and do some research on individually, so they can leverage that relationship to adding something we call spear phishing. This more targeted attack to individual by sending you a phishing email and get you to do bad things, such as wire transfer of funds from, let's say if you're CFO, you get email from your CEO, say, please transfer a certain amount of money to a bank account somewhere. And most likely, if you're not careful, you may get tricked by such activity. And the FBI actually put out a warning earlier this month and say that this is a huge opportunity, because this is, far as a return on investment for the criminal, that this is actually a very lucrative business right now. And FBI certainly see a increase in activity. So I wanted to especially mention this, and we can go to the next slide. So the BEC, our business email compromise attacks, are usually quite organized out there. These are organizations. These are organized crime organizations where they actually have role and responsibility and for each steps. And so these are not going to be your traditional phishing email or email that has a lot of spelling errors or is not well written. These are organizations hire professional technical writers, and so everything when they come across, they're going to look legitimate. Also, sometimes when they send out phishing email, they may have certain accounts within the organization compromised. So they don't even have to fake the email. They can usually send email. Let's say if they have a login password for the CEO email account, they can send out email from the CEO account. So that's one extreme of cases. And so as you can see, that they will do some surveillance, assess the potential target, and they will narrow down to create a target list and kind of like a strategy or plan, tactical plan, how to go after these potential victims. And if they respond, sometimes they will go they will converse, establish like a rapport with their victim, make them think, that the person they're dealing with is somebody they know. And then, when the opportune time comes, they will request some financial transaction by creating a fraud that they were sending some money. And a lot of time, the attacker, they will not host their own account, but rather they will get a third party to do the money transaction. So they're very well organized, and it's going to be a quite a bit of challenge sometime. And but also, because the current unemployment situation, a lot of people may lost their jobs, and sometimes people tend to take the short way out of the personal situation by helping these organizations are work for these organizations. So these will be the challenges that we're going to be seeing in the user community. Next slide. So here's some recommendations that we have, for business out there to kind of, instead of social distancing for cybersecurity. These are some of the things you can, preventive measures you can take. First of all, no one should ever post any personal identifiable information on internet. For example, your birthday, social security, driver license, these things. I think most people are fully aware of it. And and also, I would recommend you lessen the posting of any internal company information or community activity information that will give the attacker opportunity to understand your social aspect. And you can restrict those kind of posting on your intranet and within the company, or a particular group, like in the social media, you have certain groups only allow user of that group to participate. And if you see any email that looks suspicious, you're not sure, always consult with your IT person. And I think that this particular area is where kind of without face-to-face interaction when you go to the company, because, for example, if you go into your company on a daily basis, you may stick your head in somebody's cubicle or office, ask them, "Oh, did you send me this request for fund transfer?" But because people are more distant right now, and that's giving the attacker a much stronger opportunity. And also, the company policy and process can help too, because, for example, if payment system only allow register vendors, that this could help filter out, because it will be an out of norm process if a CEO as CFO just wire money to another vendor without going through the systematic process that's already set up. And last but not least, certainly having a good cybersecurity tools. Company like Trend Micro, that's what we do. And there's a lot of good tools out there for all levels, anywhere from your endpoint of your device, PC, to gateway, to mail scanning tools, to intrusion, and also all the way up to cloud today. There's security layer, every layer. And also mobile devices, that's extension to the endpoint. Okay, next slide. So with everything that's going on right now, and I would just like to review some fundamentals that could protect the user. And these are kind of things we went through in the prior webinar and seminars. And so user security, you got a strong password, email security, and online and remote offices. And we're going to go to the next slide. So we will not going to go rehash too much on the password, email, and online safety. like I mentioned earlier, a lot of tools will help. The password, you certainly want to use a strong password. Two-factor, multiple-factor authentication on your key accounts, that's going to be critical. And on the email safeties, kind of watch out for the spam, but a good email security tool will actually help you filter the spam and phishing email. And online safety, I will not recommend you use your browser without some kind of security tool that runs in the background. For example, a lot of security tools have email web reputation services. They will monitor all the malicious sites. Before you go to malicious site, it will block you from going into these sites. And so more importantly, we want to look at is remote office. And for one thing, I think it's going to be challenging to the company, corporation, IT departments that you're no longer just protecting your user behind a firewall. The boundary is everywhere. So protecting your data in transit is going to be quite important. And that's something you have to think about, because what you have lost, in case there's a breach, the value of the data that's actually been sold in the underground market, but by the hackers, that's worth a lot more than your computer system or your time, because those are potentially valuable informations. And be careful when you use a public Wi-Fi. And but for now we're under lockdown, so probably not as much to worry about. But once we open up, the public Wi-Fi, there's some rules in engagement you should be aware of it, and it's very easy for a public Wi-Fi system to get hacked and are leveraging the public Wi-Fi address APN to hack into your machine. And also remote office, you probably want to think about a clear backup security strategy, because a lot of time we keep our data in the common drive, like a OneDrive, a Google Drive, Dropbox, these type of scenario. And a lot of these vendors, because a lot of more remote worker now, they are going to be challenged with their technology, because every time there's a crisis, what we're seeing is help the solution provider or vendor like Trend Micro to be to enhance our process, our overall our capability to better protect our community and user and customers alike. And okay, next slide. And also on the device security, I think that this is the same. These are the same important points that we talk about with the normal in a normal time. But the server and the scalability of the users is going to be different, right? And for example, a company like Trend Micro, we may our network traffic between the home user and remote users now, and the company may increase by 5 to 10x or even higher. And so we would have to think through those ideas. And one thing I do want to point out here is, if you work from home, if you don't have a company issue laptop, you may have to use some home machines, or try to isolate accounts at minimum. Ideally, you use different machines for your payment system, and the machines your kids or family play internet games, right? And because the purpose of each machine are quite different, and it's best to keep it safe. Okay. Okay, and also for mobile device, Bill, you mentioned you would like to.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yes. So this is actually taken from a report that Trend published about a year and a half ago. We have the reference in the notes. Mobile devices are incredibly powerful and they have a lot of different kinds of connectivity. And sometimes by default, that connectivity is on. That's for convenience. But in this case, there's a clear trade-off between the convenience of having the connectivity and the security risk. Mobile devices have operating systems just like our PC does. And those companies that devices will issue updates to that operating system. You may see from time to time that you'll need to take a moment and let your device restart itself, rebuild itself. This doesn't happen nearly as often as it does for PCs, but make sure you check that. There's a tab in your device where you can say, are there any updates outstanding? Similarly, with the applications you put on the device, you can check to see if there are updates for those as well. I check app updates every week or two. This is especially important given that you're communicating with your users often through these devices, and your prospects and customers are looking up your services through these devices, and they wouldn't want to be damaged by linking up with an unsafe app. Use the built-in security features that are there and turn off permissions. Many times you'll get permissions requests from applications that are just bizarre. I was, in my particular case, I've got a set of apps that mimic the Google applications that I use for things like contacts and phone lists and so on. Well, the vendor's version of this requires access to just about everything on my machine. It's easy to leave the default in place and say, hey, I'm never going to use that set of apps. But once you turn on a permission, if the application becomes corrupted, the permission can be exploited by malware. Turn off location access if you don't need it, or use general rather than specific. First of all, it'll save you some battery life. And second of all, unless you really need to know the street address of a particular building, good enough will be good enough. Turn off Bluetooth. Again, it's often on by default, but Bluetooth will use battery and it will always be searching for a device to talk to. So shut that off when you don't need it. As Mitchel mentioned, do not connect to unsecure Wi-Fi networks. The one in your home is probably good. We've already talked about making sure that that device is up to speed. When you're wandering around, be skeptical. Only download apps from trusted sources. Even the Apple Store, even Google Play have apps that sometimes get corrupted, but they police them and they'll remove them. Also, when you get unsolicited calls, don't answer them, block them. There's a kind of hack where a spammer will call you and you look at the number, it only rings once, and so you call them back. What you don't realize is the number you're calling is being routed to a pay for service call, and you'll be talking to someone about something nonsensical while you're charged $10 a minute for your connectivity. Don't return calls from unknown users. Use long, strong passwords. The guidance that we used to have about it's got to be upper and lowercase, it's got to be letters and numbers, it's got to be special characters. That makes passwords that are impossible to remember, and so people write them down. Much better just string together 4 or 5 words so you get a password that's 15 or 20 characters long. Picture yourself in a boat on a river. I'm a Beatles fan. That's a great password because computer algorithms won't take it. It'll take them billions of years to crack that one randomly. Don't put personal data in apps or on websites unless it's absolutely necessary. And consider using a third-party vendor security product to protect those devices. Again, if you have any questions, post them to us and we'd be happy to reach out to you afterwards.
Okay, thank you, Bill. And to summarize the everything we talk about, I think through COVID-19 is really a crisis, pandemic, and through these crises, it will give the security vendors and the community more higher level awareness, and also a lot of innovation and enhancement will be made to how we do business, working remotely or working from home, or have to be online more. And I think we're seeing a lot of that. And some of the vendors may have some challenges initially, but I think we're definitely going the right direction. And give you an example, what I can think of it, like I think Facebook's getting a lot of pressure just this week on potentially fake news, people spreading, right? So they will enhance their filtering process, just make sure fake news that doesn't get propagated. And in the Vietnam conference, we some of the video conference capability there. There's some vulnerability, and people can hack in. These kind of things are the community and vendors are addressing, working together. And so there's some additional resources I'm going to reference to. These are our national partners, SCORE, CSA here, of course, and also Cybercrime Support Network. I think each group have some dedicated area on COVID-19 cyber crime or cyber security related topic. And also Trend Micro, we do have a dedicated website put together by our research and education team on COVID-19 virus related. Next slide. And yeah, I will not go through this in detail. These the tools that we have, and I also believe the next frontier is going to be the IoT, Internet of Things. I can see that that's going to create a huge opportunity for the threat actors because we got so many home devices through Amazon or Google, are different tools that they can like a Google Assistant. They're linking in together into one area. Go ahead, go to the next slide. Okay, I think that's it, and hope everyone will stay virus free, both on the human side and cyber side through this crisis. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. There are so many points that you discussed that I just want to underscore, and we're going to take plenty of time for Q&A here in the next 15 minutes. So as you start to submit your questions through the Q&A field, I'm going to talk through a few resources, but I can't emphasize enough, as you switch to or put more emphasis on your e-commerce platforms and your mobile payment devices, just as Bill and Mitchell emphasized, enabling multi-factor authentication on all those accounts is so critical, in addition to having a strong passphrase. So that's a really quick win that you can engage right now. The access control and isolating payment systems is so important. Limit who has access to the back end of your payment systems, and making sure that they're not on the same network as those Internet of Things devices that you have in your office or your home. So separating those networks if you can. Now, the National Cybersecurity Alliance early on that a lot of great organizations were coming up with resources for avoiding cyber threats and scams, for working from home securely. And so we put together the COVID-19 library that we wanted to bring together all those resources, and the resources that Trend Micro discussed and presented there on that website, as well as many of our other partners. And so we encourage you, if you're looking for resources, to check out this library or start there as you begin to investigate how to teach your employees about teleworking securely, or about how to avoid scams. And as as I think Bill discussed about PCI, the Payment Card Industry Security Standards Council does have some resources at pcissc.org/merchants. One is a guide to safe payments, and one is a common payment systems. They have resources that you can take advantage of to learn specifically about how to more secure your payment systems. But again, a lot of the guidance in those documents are what Mitchell went through and what Bill went through in our simple guidance in this webinar. Again, back to strong passphrases, multi-factor authentication, updated software. All of those core tenets transcend kind of all of this advice. Also, I just want to let you know that upcoming, we have a few additional webinars. So we have, as Mitchell discussed, on May 5th, we're going to be bringing together some other speakers from Trend Micro. We'll be bringing together Generali Global Assistance and the Federal Trade Commission to talk about some of the scams that are targeting small businesses. And because the scams are just changing so rapidly in this environment, we're going to repeat it again on May 26th to highlight any newer scams that have emerged in the 2 to 3 weeks that in between. And so I encourage you to check out those webinars and register for them at StaySafeOnline.org. And with that, I'm going to check and see if we have any questions. We will be able to send the PowerPoint out to everybody. This webinar has been recorded, and we will post it to the StaySafeOnline.org website and send a notification to all registered users once it has been posted with directions on how to access that file. And so let's see, looks like no questions have come in. Are there, since there aren't any questions, Bill or Mitchell, do you have any kind of final parting words on how businesses can lock down their information and systems in today's crazy world?
Yeah, from my perspective, I think as I may have mentioned already, the with the COVID-19, we saw a very steep curve, how it propagated through the world, and on the cybersecurity side, the curve is not going to be quite steep, but it's going to have a longer tail, from my perspective. And so as we see from FBI reports, cybercrime already on the increase, kind of like the COVID-19 testing, right? How many people are tested? Is that really the infection rate is really represent the general population, or that's just the number of people we tested? And the cybercrime reporting to FBI, I think, have the same context. Those are only people who reported, but there may be a lot of more activity than we see out there. But usually, as we see, like in a different ransomware scenarios, the tail is going to be much longer. People are going to take advantage of this big confusion and this fast propagation of human viruses to leverage that particular scenario to propagate more and more robust cybercrime activities. And I think and our method of protection is going to be different, right? Instead of staying at 6 feet social distancing, there's different way to fight cyber viruses.
But we did get one question that came in, I will say, and it's regarding best practices to confirm a request for the transfer of sensitive assets, such as a bill to be paid or a wire transfer. What are some ways to verify the legitimacy of those requests?
I'll take that if I could. I actually ran into a colleague who is an executive with one of the larger banks in New York, and he told me this story about a business email compromise that took place, and it's illustrative for two reasons. First, how sophisticated the attack is, and second, what the best practice for resolving it is. This gentleman who was the administrative assistant to the president of one of the branches of the banks got an email from a friend of his. It was very casual and breezy in tone, said, "Hey, Fred, it's Joe. I saw how well your son did in that basketball game last Thursday. He's really turning into a fine, skilled young player. Say, by the way, hate to trouble you, but my boss is just wondering if the bank could, clear this invoice. Not a big deal for you, but it's getting close to the end of the quarter. And if you could just have your accounts payable people jump on this, it'd be great." And it was from Joe, who was the administrative assistant of a manufacturing firm. There's a big client of the bank. And it turned out Joe and Fred were friends. So Fred looked at it and said, oh my gosh, something slipped through the cracks. He forwarded the email directly to somebody he knew in the accounts payable department, and they started working on it. And then Fred got an email back from AP saying, hey, the account number you gave us isn't valid. And Fred goes, huh? Wow. So he called his friend Joe up. He said, hey, Joe, about that invoice you sent me, the account you sent wasn't valid. What invoice? The bad guys got Joe and Fred's information from LinkedIn. You don't even have to hack LinkedIn. You get a premium subscription and it'll give you all that information just by asking. Because of the availability of personal information on Facebook, the bad guys figured out that Joe and Fred lived in the same area and that Joe's brother-in-law coached the basketball team that Fred's son was on. That's how they crafted the email. If they had not mistyped the number of the account, the bank would have sent $5 million somewhere. Always call. If there's anything ambiguous, call. In this case, Fred could have been more diligent, but my gosh, how compelling the note was. It was from his friend. The email seemed good. Yes, his son had played in the basketball tournament. Yeah, he was kind of a standout that night, so he was proud. Between friendship and a little bit of personal pride, he didn't think twice about forwarding it. So yeah, always use, we call it out of band, always use a different mechanism. If he'd sent an email to Joe saying the number wasn't right, Joe, the hacker, would have sent back, oh, sorry, I was in a rush, and would have gotten through. Always use out of band. Always use another mechanism. Call the person, walk down the hall if you can, and say, is this real? You'll be much happier confirming it. And your boss will be happy that you took the time to ask.
And I'll add 2 points to that. One is when you are calling, don't use the call information that they provide in that email, right? Use a trusted phone number because they can trick you that way. And yeah, I can't stress that enough. Verify that request by physically going to them or calling a trusted phone number, and be very suspicious if they try to encourage you to not follow those processes, right? If they say, I'm traveling and I don't have time for you to give me a call, I need you to just do this, right? That sense of urgency should be a very big red flag, or that request for you to go around an established process should be a very big red flag for you.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect example where I mentioned the company process, right? If your ERP system requires the vendor, before you make any payment out for invoice, they had to register in the system, and if you carefully execute those steps, the exception process handling will may not override your system and process itself.
That's great. Well, that was our only question that came in. Bill, do you have any final thoughts? Mitchell provided us with his.
Yeah, I'm going to look at the person side. I would like to remind people that you are the strongest link in cybersecurity. Now, let me explain that. Here's a way to see if your cybersecurity system is up to speed. I want you to imagine a colleague who happens to see something that looks wrong on a computer system. I want you to ask that colleague, not an IT person, just somebody you work with, 3 questions. First, would they know if it were wrong? Second, would they choose to report it? And then third, if they picked up the phone, would they know who to call? If the answers are yes, yes, and yes, you've won. It doesn't matter what technology you've got, because your people will make it work to keep the information and the enterprise secure. But if there's a no in there, if they don't know if it's right or wrong and are not inclined to investigate, doesn't matter what technology you got, the bad guys are in. Second, they aren't sure if they should report it because they heard about, well, so-and-so did report a security incident, and now nobody invites them to the basketball game, nobody sits with them in the lunch count, they go to their boss and say, I think this is wrong. And the boss says, well, you have a valid point, but it's not our department, so we really shouldn't perturb their, again, then you've lost. And third, she picks up the phone. She knows it's bad. She decides to go ahead and report. She picks up the phone. And so she calls security and says, there's a breach, and security wants to know which door was propped open. So she said, no, IT security base, they call the help desk, and the help desk starts off asking, well, what model of computer are you using? And it becomes a long enough, tedious process that the individual gives up. You are the strongest link. Your people are the strongest link. You put all the technology in the world in place, but to quote Nathan Fillion's character from the end of the thing, if you don't have heart, it's not going to fly. So make sure your people understand that they're important and valued, and they will make sure that your business stays secure to the best they can.
That's great. Thank you. Well, I want to thank Bill and Mitchell for spending the hour with us. And I want to thank all of you for joining us on today's webinar. If you want to learn more about any of this information or any of the National Cybersecurity Alliance's efforts, you can join us at StaySafeOnline.org. Again, I want to thank Trend Micro Education, Generali Global Assistance, and ITSP Magazine for supporting the Cybersecurity My Business program and making this possible. And Trend Micro specifically, who has partnered with the National Cybersecurity Alliance for this COVID-19 series that we're rolling out, or that we've been rolling out throughout the last few weeks. And so we were featuring a lot of their amazing experts, and in addition to our federal partners, et cetera, to make sure that you have the resources that you need to be secure during this time of increased scams and teleworking insecurity, et cetera. So we hope you take advantage of them. I hope we see you on a future webinar. And with that, we are going to come to a close, and we should have the webinar posted sometime tomorrow to our website. And so you'll receive a notification then. So thank you all. Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Mitchell, for sharing your expertise with us today. And I hope you all have a safe and happy rest of the week.
Great.
Thanks.